Hello, welcome to our Matchbook Horse Racing podcast or Periscope, looking ahead to the feature action from Newmarket and elsewhere on what is a Super Saturday of racing. It's called Super Saturday now, Rory Delargy. That really, ever since I think the Newmarket July Festival moved its days around and added to the Saturday action, it suits the racecourses. Oh, it's a busy day, isn't it? There's a lot to get you.
Yeah, it's especially, I think, if you skip on a week and it's tumbleweeds, isn't it? That's the feast or famine we have in the summer flat season, unfortunately. So this is there's so much to take in this weekend.
Just on that, will you? I don't know how you normally approach it necessarily, but will you get stuck into Chester, to York, to Ascot, to Newmarket, or will you sort of say, well, hang on, if I'm going to do this properly and actually make it a good Saturday, I might keep abreast of everything, but as far as the hard and fast studying goes, you'll just pick out a couple of meetings or a couple of races for me?
Yeah, I mean, I'll see how it grabs me, but the first thing I'll do is obviously I've looked at Newmarket now. I'll have a proper look at York, which is a tremendous meeting. And then if there's enough in there to keep me going, that'll be it. If I find that a couple of those races are real struggles, then I'll move on to Ascot and see what catches the eye there. I won't even look at Chester. I'll try to catch up with Ascot on the day, and then review everything at the end of it. But yeah, there's some days where you know that there's too much to take in, and even once you look at it, once you open the box, you can't close it again. So if you think, I'll just have a look at Chester first, you're in massive trouble straight away, aren't you?
I'm going to hold my hands up straight away and say I'm giving Limerick and Salisbury a swerve. I'm swerving. Right, as far as the Darley July Cup goes, I think it's one of the most interesting renewals we've had for a long time. It might not be the best on paper, but I think it's one of the most interesting given the new kids we seem to have on this block. Because, well, I suppose Advertise, who heads the betting currently 4.0, this was always a likely target this season, although did start off as a Guineas contender, went off at 12.0 for that contest. Dream of Dreams has emerged a live candidate for this after that run last time, and I suppose the Windsor run 5.0. Kate Byron, a mere handicapper, 6.0. I jest, of course. He was brilliant last time. Brando, yes, this is the usual path he treads, 10.0, and bigger prices into 10 Sovereigns and Fairyland. A couple of the Aidan O'Brien 3-year-olds in there who did also start their careers over Guineas trip, or in the Guineas, I should say. First things first, I suppose I always look to get stuck into something at bigger prices, but for whatever reason, Advertise, he was brilliant last time, but I think he looks skinny enough at 4.0 heading this betting. If I had to choose between he and Dream of Dreams, I'd probably be in the Dream of Dreams camp, but I am going to side with something a little bit bigger. But just as far as you tie up the head of the market, Rory, is there something there grabbing your attention?
I respect the head of the market, but neither of them want me to crack open the wallet, to be honest. Dream of Dreams is sort of typical Sir Michael Stout in that he fell a long way short of this level a couple of seasons ago, despite being very highly tried, and he did better on the whole last year. But he had a reputation as a horse who flattered to deceive, and clearly he stepped forward this season, and his second in the Diamond Jubilee is the best single piece of form on offer. But the question that people will ask about him is whether he's now suddenly just made that jump, and he is a horse you can rely on to run his race in Group 1 company every time. Maybe he is, and Sir Michael Stout has had plenty of horses like this over the years. And again, it would be a great feather in Danny Tudhope's cap. He's been a tremendous jockey this season. Dettori getting all the headlines, but Tudhope also lit up Royal Ascot. He's an exceptionally good judge of a race. He doesn't seem to be in the wrong position in big races very often. So again, for him to ride the winner of the July Cup would again help with his profile. But I don't know. Dream of Dreams is just one of those horses. He's a little bit hard to warm to. I don't know. I mean, how would you describe him physically?
I haven't seen him in the flesh this season. I backed him at Ascot, and it was an excellent run. But part of that was because I've backed him a fair few times in his career. I backed him at the July course last year, where David Ellsworth's horse won the race, whose name escapes me. And I thought he was disappointing on that occasion. And then I sort of ended last season thinking, stiff six, strongly run six is going to suit him, and that's why we backed him at Ascot. Having said that this isn't that, and this test, as opposed to the Ascot test, I don't think will suit him quite as well. I would rather back him at a track where he can tuck in and come from a bit off them, which is where I think it probably suits him best. And for what it's worth, I thought he got an excellent ride last time. It just didn't quite work out. This I'm not sure will suit him quite so well. What were you getting at on the physical line, Rory?
Oh, no, it's just you're right. You either find horses who look like him especially attractive or especially unattractive, and I tend to go in the latter camp. But it's just that's a purely selfish thing. That's not about his ability. He's that kind of chestnut who doesn't appeal to everyone.
Oh, so you weren't talking about necessarily running style or the way.
No, I was talking about him, his physical presence and his looks. In terms of, horses tend to get a following, partly because of their ability and what they do, but also partly because of their appearance as well. And when you have the full package, you're handsome and you're talented and you want to win, then everyone absolutely loves you. Dream of Dreams is one of those. He's a horse that would never appeal to me physically. He's that light chestnut. And they're hard to get I find them hard to get a handle on. Watching them on TV, what they're like physically as well. I find the color tends to obscure them a little bit. Similarly with greys, it's not always easy to see how well a grey is in the paddock because of their coloring. So that tends to. I'm aware that makes me slightly biased against horses like that because they never quite get into my affections. But what he's done, yes, this track might not suit him. He might well have been ideally suited by the way the race was set up at Ascot, because he came from a long way off the pace. Blue Point put the race to bed and then struggled to get home. We know that 6 furlongs at Ascot is probably the limit of Blue Point's stamina, and he was ridden to beat everything else off. Dream of Dreams never really looked like challenging him until the last 100 yards and came from well off the pace. Maybe he was slightly flattered by that. But it's worth pointing out that he's won at the likes of Chelmsford and Windsor this season, which are not tracks that should suit him either. So maybe he's simply improved to this level. He is the best horse in the race, and we're doing him down because he's not the prettiest horse in the race. Or because of what's happened in the past in terms of if you followed him last year or the year before, you'd have been poorer as a result. But he's a different horse this season. I still can't quite latch on to him, but I'm aware that that's something I need to be wary of myself. It's not a weakness in him. It's a sort of a blind spot in me. So I'm neutral with him. Advertise, I wasn't impressed with that race at the time. I was expecting a really good Commonwealth Cup, and I found myself scratching my head afterwards. 10 Sovereigns didn't seem to run his race. Jash didn't seem to run his race. But you then look at the result on paper after the race. Time form give him an extremely good speed figure for that. The time figure is very, very high, suggesting that the reason sometimes you look at races that fall apart and you go, oh, that form's not worth anything, because clearly too many of these horses were beaten too early for it to mean anything. And the reason that you see races like that a lot is often because the performance is so good that a lot of horses can't compete. And you get this lie that you wanted a really tight finish to know that these were good horses, and you end up having a horse who blows it apart. And your temptation is to say that it wasn't very good form, when actually it's because one horse was so much better than the others. So that's a possibility. And I respect Advertise as well. But again, can't quite climb on the bandwagon with him just yet. Lamato, Connection said after he won last time out that they would try to avoid the temptation of coming here. They said that he's been revived in the last year or so because they've stopped aiming him at all the big races, lowered his sights a little bit, allowed him to get some confidence back. And he's been winning at a lower level. But of course, he was giving a penalty away last time out when winning the Criterion Stakes. We know he would have won that much more easily at 6 furlongs than 7. He stays this trip, but he's 6 furlongs is probably still ideal for him. And, that makes him kind of interesting. I didn't think they would resist the temptation to run here. Indeed, they haven't. And I just wonder whether he will be as happy a horse in this race as he's looked of late, or whether this experiment with giving him easier tasks has fully restored his confidence and he will actually show that he's as good as ever. He's not far off it. I mean, he's not, the form that he was shown last time out wasn't quite as good as when he won this race a few years ago. Well, the interesting thing is you nearly had a repeat of the finish of the July Cup from, what is it, 4 years ago now, when he beat Swedwa. They finished first and third.
Lamato?
Yeah.
2016.
2016, sorry, 3 years ago when he won this, he beat Swedwa. And it looked like they were going to finish first and second again last time. So you could argue that that's kind of showing that, they're back to their best, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. And again, I can keep going down the field here, but essentially what I'm saying is that there are positives for quite a lot of the field, and there are negatives, or potential negatives as well. And I think it's quite an open race. My play at the moment, based on the last prices I saw, I'd probably take a chance on Pretty Pollyanna.
Ah, good stuff. I was thinking, having you gone through plenty that I did from the back, that we were going to agree. She's one or two of mine. Go on.
Yeah, she was just a tremendously likable juvenile last year, and the issue with her has always been whether she could sustain her speed for a mile, because they obviously want her to turn into a Guineas filly, and she ran an absolute cracker for a long way in the Irish 2000 Guineas, and to finish second in that shows that she's trained on tremendously well. But she was losing ground to Hermosa at the end of the race there. When she was beaten in the Fillies Mile, she clearly didn't stay. The form that she showed early in the season has worked out pretty well. She was given another chance in the Coronation Stakes. That was a slightly messy race anyway, but she didn't run up to her form, and she blatantly did not stay. I think sometimes when you got fillies who are speedy like her, and you're asking them to show their speed from the start, they can often hold on longer than you expect, and you get this false impression that they stayed well enough. And sometimes in more tactical races where they've got to kick in the turbo late in the day, they don't use their speed early. That's where stamina is sometimes more evident, even though the argument should be that because you're not going at such a pace throughout the race, your stamina shouldn't be tested as much. But for me, it's when you're asked to show your speed. There are horses who maybe wouldn't be the strongest stayers in the world who are able to relax and show a turn of foot at the end of the races. But she's not like that. She wants to show her speed throughout. And I think she's been screaming out for a drop back to 6 furlongs for months and months now. It's perfectly reasonable to try to turn a filly into a Guineas filly. But there comes a time where you've been there, you've danced that dance, and you know that she doesn't quite stay, and you drop her back. I mean, I remember one of the best sprinters ever was Habibti, before your time, Tom, obviously. But in 1983...
I'm nodding because I have to know about horses.
Yeah. Habibti was absolutely exceptional in her 3-year-old season. She won a Group 1 the following year as a 4-year-old, but she wasn't the same horse. But as a 3-year-old, she was absolutely exceptional, and she was up against another exceptional filly in the shape of Soba, and they met throughout the season, and Habibti won all their clashes. She ran in both the Guineas and the Irish Guineas, and ran well in both races, despite the fact that she didn't really stay. But when they dropped her back to 5 and 6 furlongs, she was absolutely exceptional. Whether Pretty Pollyanna is in the same league, we'll only find out on Saturday. But judging her in the form that she's shown so far is dangerous, because everything about her last season suggested that she just wants to show that speed that she has throughout her race, roll along and use it. And this will be her ideal trip. There's obviously a slight question mark when you try a filly 3 times over a mile, are you blunting that speed? Are you teaching her things that you shouldn't teach her as a sprinter? But as I said, going back to her Big T, she was given her chance in 2 Guineas and still proved to be the best sprinter in the country. Ajdal, who won the July Cup, was an exceptional sprinter. They tried him in the Guineas. He didn't quite stay. He was Guineas' favourite. They then tried him in the Derby, which was a bizarre thing to do when you think about it. But Sheikh Mohammed wanted to win the Derby, and they dropped him back after the Derby to the July Cup, and he was exceptional in winning that. So hopefully, the fact that she's only trying sprinting for the first time this season now will not be a negative. And I think she's too big a price given her talent, and that's what you're fundamentally looking at when you're backing horses at the highest level. You're looking for the best horses, and she may well be as good as anything in this race.
She's about 17.0. I won't add anything to that other than also the back at the scene of her greatest success, where she beat Angel's Hideaway by 7 lengths here last year. I know she had Sylvester on board that day, as Sheen's on board here, but I thought 17.0 was just too big to go on back for exactly those reasons. And look at last year's winner. I know he was a colt, but a horse they tried to make into a miler, and US Navy flag always looked like he wanted to drop back to a sprint trip. I'm also going to back Fairyland on a similar sort of theme. Now, of course, she had a couple of Guineas runs. She doesn't stay. She came back to 5 last time, and I thought she was done for toe at the crucial part of the race, just where Batash went up on her outside and accelerated. I thought she just lacked a bit of toe there over 5, but she did stick at it, and I think 6 is her ideal trip. Now, she might just lack the real class. Right? I mean, she's a Cheveley Park winner. Hand on heart, I'm not certain she is good enough to beat everything here, but she doesn't have it much to find. She's rated 112. She's getting weight from all of them, bar Pretty Pollyanna and So Perfect. And I thought she was a fair enough price, about 15.0. So I'm going to have those 2 fillies on side, Pretty Pollyanna and Fairyland, Rory.
Yeah, and I certainly couldn't argue against Fairyland, having put the case up for Pretty Pollyanna. As you said, maybe the most crucial piece of form is the Duchess of Cambridge last year, where Pretty Pollyanna, it wasn't hugely fancied and there was trouble in the race, but she won by a wide margin and looked really well suited by the test. But Fairyland's won a Lowther and she's won a Cheveley Park, and that puts her in exactly the same sort of category. So yeah, let's hope we get the forecast.
Yeah, quite right too. The 3-year-old fillies forecast. That's the Darley July Cup. Big prices in that for both Rory and I. As far as one of the best betting handicaps on the card, the Bunbury Cup comes up at 3:30. Good old Kinran heads the betting. No one would begrudge that horse winning this race. For all, he's not going. Well, he might, but I couldn't back him when he heads the betting. Bless him. One I thought was an obvious one in here was Ripoff, 21.0. He's back to a very fair mark, a former course winner. Look at his Cape Byron form. I know he was beaten by that horse at the start of the year, but equally last year he beat him back at Ascot. He is a course winner for all. Ascot may see his best form. Yes, a stiff 7 might be more suitable, but he's won here over a little bit further. And I was really surprised he was the price he is. Now, he was disappointing at Epsom, but we can...
Not his track at all.
Exactly. 72 favourite on that occasion. But if you put a line through that, the Cape Byron run was not without promise of £2 higher. I was really surprised he was the price he was. So if he's around about 21.0 when you're listening to this, or even if there's 17.0 there, I was surprised he was that big. I thought he'd have a half decent shot here. So he's the one bet in the race, Ripoff for me in the Bunbury Cup.
Yeah, my only concern with Ripoff would be that David Ellsworth's having a very quiet season. For an excellent trainer, he's had 4 winners, I think, all season, which is way below what you'd expect from him.
I didn't realise that. Yeah, I won't. At that sort of price, I'm still happy to play the horse, but I didn't realise it was that low. I've got to say.
Yeah, 4 from 75, according to my time form page for the season, and that's obviously a worry. But every race he's run in this season, he's either run really well or is the excuses. His first 2 runs were at a mile, and he ran perfectly well in the Lincoln to be 5th, and if you write him each way, you'd probably get paid out on that. He was then beaten in the Spring Cup at Newbury, which was just a stiffer test on soft ground, and he doesn't have the he gets a mile, but he doesn't get a mile in really testing conditions. And yeah, then he ran an absolute cracker in the Victoria Cup, as he had, which he'd won last year. Epsom was all wrong for him, as I said last time out, and he's been falling in the weights all season. So he's down to a mark of 93. I always maintained last season that it was remarkable how well handicapped he was through the campaign, despite the fact that he won 3 big handicaps last season, won 4 times in all in handicap company, but he won three of the most competitive handicaps of the entire season, and yet what is he? He's only £4 higher now than when winning a really competitive handicap at Newmarket and at this meeting last year, I suppose. Not this race. He won a mile handicap. I think it was the day before. So he looks well handicapped to me. The form of the yard is a concern, but a big field over 7 furlongs here should suit him fine.
Playing the race.
If there was anything else I was playing in the race, I would also be interested. I mean, I would be interested in him, even with misgivings about the yard form, because he's a horse that I followed last season in these conditions. Spanish City is the other one. I put him up, hoping he'd get into the race for the Wokingham. He didn't in the end. He'd been shaping up really well. Again, slight misgivings about him. He ran very well in the race last year, Spanish City. He's very lightly raced for a horse of his age. My argument for him at Ascot was that I think a really strongly run race over 6 at Ascot suits him really well. But he's run very well at Newmarket before. 7 furlongs at Newmarket, probably six at Newmarket is probably too sharp for him. But he did run very well over 6 last time out to be third. His form at this sort of trip over the last year reads very well. He had a couple of wins last season. As I said, I think he's getting slightly faster as he gets older. Some horses do that. We tend to expect them to gain stamina over time, but horses are going to be sprinters. Tend to strengthen up and get a little bit more pace about them, and he's done that. So if I was having my maximum bet on Spanish City, I'd rather it was a 6 furlong handicap at Ascot than a 7 furlong handicap at Newmarket. But those would be the 2 scenarios where I think he'd be backable. I still think he's reasonably handicapped, hence him missing the cut at Ascot. And I don't know what price you've got in front of you there about him.
8.0 Spanish City.
Oh, he's skinny enough, actually, given that he was a big price for the Wokingham. I mean, it seems skinny. All things considered, I think he might get bigger on the day about him. But yeah, he should run a decent race. It's a tough contest. Yeah, it always is, and there's always the possibility of a big price winner, as we've seen in the past as well.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go overboard in the Bunbury Cup, because you do need to get the run of things to some degree. There's pace all over the track, maybe most of it among the high numbers, but you can never be entirely sure about that. And as you said earlier on, I wouldn't want to be sitting too far off the pace. But as I said, Spanish City used to be sort of come from behind horse. Now he's more likely to have the speed to race to the 4 of mid division, which should be ideal here. So he'd be one pick, and Rip Off would be the other. Assuming you're getting the prices.
I hope we're going to have a good day, Rory. As far as one other play from somewhere goes, I'm going to stick in the horse I backed at Ascot in the Hunt Cup, or one of the 10 I backed, so I can't claim too much on that because the other 9 weren't placed. But Style Hunter was 4th in behind a Fark, who I had a friend text me and say, "What about a Fark in the Hunt Cup?" And I said, "I have it on. I've heard from somebody that should know what they're talking about with regard to that horse, that he won't be ready and will need it." Never.
Inside information is never worth it, is it?
I'm never saying anything ever again to anyone on podcast, but if they like one, I'm never saying no again. But there you go. And
if they like the short price favourite, I'm always happy to give them reasons why I might not win. If they say I like this 20-1 shot, exactly, just say back it. Don't ask me about it.
Said person still backed it, so good news.
I hate to say this, but I find it hard to get away from Style Hunter as well. I know that's a really tough contest, but I've written a review of Royal Ascot, and he was one of the few horses I'd noted as horses to take forward from it. I think the Cambridgeshire is his race.
Yeah.
But he's just
last year, didn't he? When he was he got no run whatsoever.
But he was drawn on the wrong side. He finished 11th last year when he was young and inexperienced. He was one of 8 who raced under the near side, the stand side rail, and the best of those was Raising Sand. He finished 8th and then won the big handicap at Ascot next time, and he was 2nd in that group and 11th overall. I thought it was a very good run in the circumstances. He was interestingly enough behind Infrastructure. It was a place behind Infrastructure in his reappearance, and then he ran a cracking race, running on really strongly in the Hunt Cup to be 4th. He needs a step up. He needs 9 or 10 furlongs. He gets the extended 10. I don't think he needs the extended bit of that trip, but I think he'd be better over 1.25 miles than he will over 1 mile. And he's just coming to the Boyle for a yard that's exceptional at laying them out for these races. So although it's a very, very rich race, it's very competitive on paper. I just think he stands out. And it's just a case of getting the best price you can.
Yeah, he was too keen on his reappearance, but he's won over 10 before. He definitely wants further. For all, I thought the stiff mile would be ideal. He wants further, and I think he's got a very good chance. Round about 9.0 as well, but it's not an easy day by any stretch with these competitive handicaps there. Anything else you want to get in there, Rory?
No, the only other one that I wanted to mention was Shared Belief in the Superlative Stakes. And again, I'm not sure how heavily I want to get involved. It looks a decent contest with no absolutely outstanding candidate, but a lot of horses with scope to do a lot better. He impressed me at Sandown on his only start to date. He won a 7 furlong contest. Despite the fact it's by Dandy Man, he started off over 7 furlongs at Sandown on soft ground. Everything went against him on the day. He stumbled badly coming out of the stalls. He soon recovered, travelled really well through the race, and then got stopped in his run with about 1.5 furlongs, 2 to go. And he thought that's the end of his chance now, having gone wrong at the start. Has gone wrong again in the closing stages, and he recovered from that to get up to win fairly narrowly. Clearly a lot better than the bare result. That was on soft ground, but I wouldn't have thought on pedigree that he would have needed it. So I'd be happy to take a chance on him on the quicker ground. Danny Tudhope booked by Archie Watson for the ride. I thought there's lots to like about him, but that's a tough race as well. And again, prices will be crucial.
Double figures about Shared Belief at the moment.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. I wouldn't suggest he should be favourite on that. He won't be top rated in the race, but I thought there are reasons to think there's a lot more to come from him.
I'll let you go first for the best bet because I'm not sure because they're all big prices. I could very easily pick the wrong one. None of them might win, but go on. What's your best bet for that?
Now we're. I think I'll go Pretty Pollyanna as best bet.
And I'm now going to say I was going to go for that, which might ensure if she wins. I won't take you on in that race. I'll go with Style Hunter at York. I think
that would have been my alternative selection. So good. Yeah.
We're definitely singing from the same hymn sheet. So
we are. It might not be a good hymn sheet, but it's definitely the same one.
Yeah, exactly. Good stuff, Rory. Thanks very much indeed. Have a good Super Saturday, busy Saturday. Chat to you again soon. Thanks
Thank you very much.
At home for listening, for watching. Don't forget, earlier on next week, you can catch Don and my racing review. We'll be looking back at not all of the racing, because that won't be possible, but some of the very best stuff. So join us for that then. For now, from us, thanks very much. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.